First John chapter 1. You can hear me through the pulpit mic? Okay, great. First John chapter 1. By the way, I have the notes from the message that I preached on Wednesday night. And that's where I had all the numbers for this morning. But also the numbers here this morning would be the approximate amount of our sin debt. If we could apply a dollar amount to it. In Matthew chapter 18, it speaks of a servant there, and he owed the king 10,000 talents. There's that word 10,000 again. And the talent is a weight of 75 pounds of silver. So one talent is 75 pounds of silver. So I did the math for it. Silver per ounce is $28.55. For a pound, I just multiplied that number by 16. That's $456.80 a pound for silver. I multiplied that number by 75 to make 1 talent. And so 1 talent equals $34,260. And then if we just took the number that's given in the scriptures, not speaking of the Greek number, which is not a number, it's a descriptive term, myriad, that's where we get our word myriad, and we talked about that this morning. If we just multiplied $34,260 by 10,000, the minimum amount for our debt is $342,600,000. Anybody here have $342 million? Anybody here have that? Anybody, By the way, if you have that, how come you haven't tithed on that? I'm sorry. That should have been Jay's line, but Jay's not here, and so I'll take care of it. I'm just going to throw the treasurer under the bus. But the lowest dollar amount on our sin debt would be $342,600,000. Now, the Greek word there is myriad. It's an unknowable number. Our sin debt is way more than that. That's our sin debt. And so, anyways, like I said, and then we showed this morning the amount of blood it would take to wash that sin debt away. And I kept saying 75 billionth. Stephanie, being an educator, straightened me out this morning. She said, "No, Pastor," which, that's like the disciples saying, "No, Lord." Not so, Lord. Not so, Pastor. It turns out to be 75 trillionth is what the number we came up. And so when we put the commas in there, and then she started backing up like you're supposed to do, we got to 75 trillionth of an ounce of Jesus' blood would cleanse $342,600,000. And that's minimum. That's minimum. That's if 10,000 was the number, which we know 10,000 is not because we talked about it. And so anyways, if you're interested, I have the math all right here, and if you want to look at it, you're more than welcome to have it and look at it. You can double check it too, but I did 3 or 4 times because I don't want to mess that kind of math up. And I used a calculator. I didn't use my brain, and so. All right, we're in 1 John chapter 1, verse number 4. 1 John chapter 1 and verse number 4. Let's go ahead and just read from verse number 1 so we get the context. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and our hands have handled, of the word of life. For the life was manifested, and we have seen it, and bear witness, and show unto you that eternal life, which was with the Father, and was manifested unto us. That which we have seen and heard declare we unto you, that ye also may have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. Verse number 4 now. These things write we unto you, that your joy may be full. Now, how can our joy be full? Well, when we look at what he wrote in verses 1 through 3, that's where we find out our joy being full. In verses 1 through 3. And by the way, it's whittled down to one thing, the word of life, Jesus Christ. That which we handled, that which we heard, that which we have seen, the thing that we're telling you about, that which we declare unto you. All that stuff that we're doing and bearing witness for, in verse number 3, that ye also may have fellowship with us, so that you can know the same faith that I, John, the beloved, David, that I, John, the beloved, had and have. You can have that with me. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. I'm writing this to you, verse number 4, that your joy may be full. That your joy may be full. It almost sounds like God wants us to be joyful people. Right? Now, I didn't say happy people. I didn't say bubbly people. By the way, I don't like bubbly people. When I'm around somebody that's bubbly and everything, especially when I go through Dutch Brothers, they're all bubbly all the time. I'm like, shut up. And then I'm thinking, well, the reason why is because you're around all that caffeine all day. It's just being absorbed into your body, and so that naturally makes you bubbly. Maybe I need to work at Dutch Brothers. Hey. That's twice. Not so, Pastor. And I could be more bubbly than I actually am now. And so when we talk about that your joy may be full, we don't have to walk around happy all the time, smiling all the time. Because sometimes I just don't feel like smiling. However, I certainly have so much more joy in my life than somebody that's without Jesus Christ. It's a deeper emotion than happiness. I have a joy. And I am. When I look back, I am so thankful for, number one, what the Lord has done for me in salvation, but he gave me my wife, and we have joy together. I mentioned this, I think, last week or here recently. My perfect day is being in my garage with my wife, and we're just sitting there in our garage, which we converted to a playroom. We have a sectional in there, and we have a flat screen in there, and we like to play little, brain video games. Match 3 kind of stuff, and seek and find. And then if I put the Nintendo, we got a Nintendo Switch, it's brain stuff. I like my brain engaged when I play. And so it's thinking things. That's my perfect, with her in that place, and a Diet Coke. But I usually don't get a Diet Coke at home. I have to have water at home. But if we're talking about perfect, it would be her, there, that. But I have joy because it's her that God gave me. We're not in a, conflict. I hear our neighbors across the street, and boy, I hope they don't choose today to listen to the live stream. We have neighbors across the street, and boy, sometimes some of the things that comes out of his mouth towards her, I am like, why are you even staying there? Well, I mean, what is the motivation to be married to that and have that kind of language coming towards you with that kind of hatred? I'm glad that's not my marriage. I have joy. So he writes that your joy may be full, and of course all that goes back through verse numbers 1 through 3, and we talked about that. So let's take a look at this word joy, and we're going to go down through the scriptures. We're done in verse number 4. Just remember that we're jumping off of that your joy may be full. All right, turn back to the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 61. Isaiah chapter 61. You know, in the Old Testament, it speaks of having joy. You know, when I think of the Old Testament, sometimes I think of fire and brimstone coming down from heaven, go and utterly destroy, kill everything, burn the village. You know, we read that throughout the scriptures, throughout the Old Testament. You know, this nation came at war against Israel, and they were defeated, and then Israel was taken captive because they, you know, got away from the law, and this country used them as judgment, and, you know, so on and so forth. I see a lot of that kind of thing in the Old Testament, but I also notice that there's a lot of joy in the Old Testament. Isaiah chapter 61 and verse number 10. I will greatly, what's that next word? Rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be, what's that next word? Joyful in my God. For he hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. He hath covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decketh himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with jewels. Hey, Isaiah, way back in the Old Testament, is talking about rejoicing because of salvation. My soul shall be joyful in my God. All right, Habakkuk. So that's, Habakkuk. You're welcome. Sometimes I have a hard time saying this in English because I'm so used to saying this book of the Bible in Spanish, Habakkuk. But Habakkuk, keep going from Isaiah towards the New Testament, and you'll run across it. It'll be like Jonah, Micah, Nahum. And then I think you hit Zephaniah somewhere in there, and then Habakkuk is right around in that area. If you can't find it, you have a table of contents. But Habakkuk chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. Habakkuk chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the field shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. Doesn't all that sound bad? If you're a farmer or you're a sheep herder, all of this sounds bad. There's not going to be blossom on the fig tree, so that means no fruit. There's not going to be fruit on the vines. There's going to be no grapes. There's not going to be any olives on the olive tree, so there's not going to be any olive oil. By the way, olive oil and balsamic vinegar. 3. Habakkuk 3 and verse 17. And the field shall yield no meat, so if you planted grains, there'll be no grain. And the flock shall be cut off from the fold, and so you're not going to even get meat from sheep or goats, whatever your flock is. And there should be no herd in the stalls. So no cows, no camels, no oxen. All that sounds bad, right? Verse number 18. Yet I will, and what's that next word? Rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. It doesn't matter what goes on in our lives. It doesn't matter how the circumstances are. It doesn't matter how bad the bank account is. It doesn't matter how many creditors there are. It doesn't matter how our health is. And none of that matters. I will joy in the God of my salvation. That's where we need to get to. That's where we need to get to. Is rejoicing and having joy no matter what's going on. No matter what. All right, John chapter 15. John chapter 15. And we'll look at verse number 11. John chapter 15 and verse number 11. All right, and this is John who? That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. John chapter 15 and verse 11, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. But he says this in the first part of the verse, these things have I spoken unto you. So now we have to look back and see what things he spoke, right? Jump back up to verse number 1. Jesus is speaking, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, and so shall ye be my disciples. As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Verse number 11, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. It almost sounds like if we stick close to Christ, our joy is going to be full. He says, I am the branch, I am the vine, you are the branches. By the way, it always takes me back to the kid song. I am the vine, you're the branches, and you have to, make the motions and all that. But, the branches, that they get all their nourishment from the trunk, right? The same thing in a tree. All of the branches and all of the leaves get the nourishment from the trunk. And that's what this is referring to. And if we're a branch off of Jesus Christ, it sounds like we get all of our strength and all of our power and all of our nourishment from him. And if we do that, we'll have, our joy will be full. And then it says, if we keep his commandments, verse number 10, if you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, and even as I have kept my Father's commandments. Do you think Jesus felt stressed because he had to keep his Father's commandments? Do you think he felt oppressed? We might use that word. Oh, you're oppressing me because you're making me keep your rules. You are oppressed. Just be quiet. Nothing I say here applies to you. Just be in your oppressed state. But it almost sounds like if you keep my commandments, if you love me, keep my commandments. That's another verse. It almost sounds like that if we love him and we keep his commandments, then our joy will be full. Boy, I really like having my joy full. I could almost, almost be bubbly sometimes. It hurts. Sometimes I can't. I have to tell you, I was having a good time with some of the folks at the church there in Alamogordo. we've been there enough where we know them, they know me. You know, we have a good back and forth. And one of the ladies there, as we were walking through the door to go to eat, one of the ladies looked at my wife and said, "You sure do have a pretty outfit on tonight." And you know, my wife gets that often. I looked at her and I said, "You know, I'm wearing clothes too." So there's sometimes when I can be joyful, bubbly. You know, I can have a good time sometimes. But it almost sounds like, if you love me, keep my commandments, and I will make your joy full. All right, you're in John 15. Let's go to John 16. And verse 24. John 16 and verse 24. Hitherto have ye asked nothing in my name. Ask, and ye shall receive. What's that next several words there? That your joy may be full. It almost sounds like if we would pray in the name of Jesus, in the will of Jesus, that our joy will be full. Let me kind of just share with you a prayer that would not be in the will of Jesus. All right? Not in the will of God. Lord, help me win the lottery. If you help me win the lottery, then I'll give something to missions. Okay?
How's that bad?
God's not, well, only because I was messing around with Mom earlier, yesterday or the day before. We had gotten, we got a pretty good love offering for preaching at the conference. And part of it was cash, and there were some cents in there, so there was like 61 cents in there. And I said, I'm going to give this to missions. All right, did you catch it? We got a pretty good love offering, but I'm going to give 61 cents to missions. Was God honored in that? All right. And so, you know, you don't use that excuse or that planning with God, you know, to pray for something that you're going to use on your lust. You're going to waste on your lust, or what's the wording? Consume it upon your lust. Thank you. You know, he does talk about that in our prayer life. And so when it says here, hitherto ye have asked nothing in my name, ask and ye shall receive, that your joy may be full. There are some things that we ask just to consume it on our lust. Those are things that God's not going to just give to you. He's not going to give you a big bank account just because. However, it could happen if you're obedient. You could get a good bank account. If you're obedient. Given, it should be given unto you. That's a command with promise. All right, ask, and you shall receive. Now, some of you need to ask better for that spouse that you chose. Wait, Amanda's not in here. Ask, and you shall receive, that your joy may be full. And so again, it almost sounds like, if you love me, keep my commandments, and that your joy may be full, and that ask, and you shall receive, so that your joy may be full. And we need to ask according to his will. It also says in the scriptures, you know, somewhere, and this is all just coming as I'm preaching, but it says, you have not because you ask not. A lot of times the reason why we don't have anything is because we don't ask. We just, well, God, you know I have this need. Yes, he knows you have the need. He tells us in the scriptures, though, to name the need. Name it. Name it. Name it. And you shall receive. Why? That your joy may be full. All right, Galatians chapter 5. The fruit of the Spirit, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23. All right, that's part of the go eat popcorn. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians.
I'm sure Paul is overjoyed.
Well, he wrote in Greek and spoke Hebrew, so there's no go eat popcorn in either one of those languages. Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, and what's that next one?
Joy.
Joy. The fruit of the Spirit. Do you have any love? Do you have any joy? Now, by the way, the love there is not the warm fuzzy that you might have had, when you're in high school. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that love that we find in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That agape love, that God-like love. That love that doesn't seek its own, that doesn't seek a return. Kind of like what I have for you guys. When I say I love you, I'm not looking for anything in return. Right? I definitely don't have warm fuzzies towards you. I heard another preacher say this, I gotta love you, but I don't gotta like you. I gotta love you, but I don't gotta like you. I latched onto that, but then I found out, in the Bible it says I actually gotta like you too. As Christians, we need to like one another. Why is that? So that we can have the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such, there is no law. And so, again, a fruit that we have the Spirit of God within us. The word Spirit there is capitalized. So we're speaking of a person. The fruit of the Spirit is, and that second one is joy. 1 Peter chapter 1, and I'll be done after this one. Finally, brethren, and then how many more chapters did Paul write? 1 Peter chapter 1, and we'll look at verses 7 through 9. 1 Peter chapter 1, and verse number 7. That the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ, whom ye have not seen ye love, in whom though now you see him not, yet believing ye, and what's that next word? Rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, even at the salvation of your souls. And so this is speaking about that joy that we're going to have in heaven if we're obedient in this life. I forget who was talking about it. It may have been Jay in the men's Sunday school class last week. I think I was the week before, or I was the week before, and he was the week before that, or something. But, we focus on this life. We focus on what I want in this life, what I need in this life. We focus on this life, and this life is a vapor. 80 years is what we're promised according to Scriptures. 70 years is what we're promised in Scripture. Some of you are above that. But that's the average, and so some of us aren't going to make it to 70, and some of us are going to make it past 70. That's the average. And how many years are we going to be in heaven? A myriad. We talked about that this morning. But eternity is dependent on what we do with the 70. So do you think we ought to live this life with eternity in mind, or with the comforts of this lifetime in mind? Yeah, we need to live this life with eternity in mind. Why is that? So that I can have joy unspeakable and full of glory. You know, the Lord is coming back, and he's bringing his reward with him. We're going to stand at the judgment seat of Christ, and I want to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And I want on my one foundation, I want a lot of gold, silver, and precious stone that's not going to get burnt up. And I want to receive as many crowns as I can get. And this isn't a pride thing. It's not so that I can walk around and say how great I am, but it's so that when I am in heaven for eternity, I can look to Jesus and I can say, Jesus, this is how much I loved you. It's not so I can say how great I am, but it's so I can respect and honor him with, this is what I did with my life. And by the way, the only way I get this is to keep his commandments and do what he says in his word and live for him. And I get this. And it's not so I can walk around with a big head carrying all those crowns. It's so that I can lay them down at his feet. Revelation chapter 4. The 4 and 20 elders represent the church. That's us. And when they got down in the presence of Jesus Christ, they took their crowns off and they laid them down at his feet. That's the purpose of getting rewards, so we can lay them down at his feet and honor him. How great is it going to be for eternity to have nothing to lay down at his feet? I want to have joy unspeakable and full of glory. And the context here is in heaven. By the way, in verse number 9, it says, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. That's not saved salvation. That is the full completion of our salvation. How many of you are saved bodily right now? Yeah, none of us, because we're all in our decrepit bodies, right? Even you young people, your body's decrepit. You wake up in the morning and there's that first pop and you're like, oh no, it's starting. There's that first creak, oh no. There's that back pain, oh no. You know, it's starting. For me, it's constant. I'm standing up here in pain. I am not, my salvation is not 100% complete. There's still the salvation of my body and by the way, my soul. Because you remember we're 3 parts, body, soul, and spirit, if you're saved. And the body is this thing that you see. The soul is the person that you know, right? My likes, dislikes, seat of my emotions, if I had any. Some of you caught that. The spirit is the part that speaks with God, communicates with God. And so this is the salvation of my soul and my body. I get my glorified body. I get my glorified soul. That's what we're talking about in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 7 through 9. We're not talking about salvation. We're talking about the completion of, the fulfillment of all of the promises. And part of that is glorification. And so I want to have joy in this life. We saw in Isaiah 61 and Habakkuk 3 and John 15 and John 16 and Galatians 5. But I also want to have joy in the life to come. 1 Peter chapter 1. Anybody else have that desire? We all ought to have that desire. We all ought to have that desire. All right, questions, comments about anything we looked at? Jumping off of John 4:1.